Many people who've watched Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey have already called it a masterpiece. But after I saw The Odyssey in the movie theater, later that night, I put in a Blu ray of a true masterpiece, Brian De Palma's Casualties of War. Now, this Vietnam War film has always been on my Mount Rushmore of favorite De Palma films, but I have always hesitated calling it a masterpiece, mainly because, it did horrible at the box office when it was released in 1989, and it received no accolades, and nobody really even mentions it along with all the other Vietnam War films. But now I'm ready to explain why Casualties of War does, in fact, meet that criteria. First, it was a true passion project for Brian De Palma. He had been wanting to make the film for 20 years, ever since he first read about the true story of the awful crime that took place during the Vietnam War. It was only after the success of The Untouchables that De Palma had the power and funding to make such an ambitious film. That and an executive producer with enough courage to champion the film, as was the case with Dawn Steele, who had just become head of Columbia Studios. She said yes to greenlighting the film when others declined. So De Palma assigned the screenplay to David Rabe, a noted playwright and Vietnam War veteran, enlisted go-to technical advisor Dale Dye for authenticity and to combat train the actors. Dye also played a small part in the film. But the film truly relies on the three principal stars, Michael J. Fox, Sean Penn, and Thuy Thu Le. Fox was known primarily for comedic roles, and to this day his role as Erickson remains his most dramatic. De Palma reportedly cast Fox because of his everyman presence. And I can say with confidence, it's his best performance. That same year, Tom Cruise received an Oscar nomination for Oliver Stone's Born on the 4th of July. And I get it, Cruise worked very hard in a very demanding role that covers a lot of ground. But in my opinion, Fox gives the more natural performance and runs the gamut of emotions. The scene in the bar, where he tearfully recounts the crime to a chaplain, is incredibly powerful. Penn probably got most of the acclaim when the film came out in 1989. His Sergeant Meserve is a charismatic leader with a dark side. You get the sense he's not exactly book smart, but reached NCO status at a young age due to his gung-ho attitude and leadership. You can imagine that he might have been, say, the captain of his high school football team before the war. While the role does give Penn a chance to chew some scenery, he also adds subtle layers to the character. His character's duality is illustrated in the film when he saves Erickson from being killed by an enemy coming out of the tunnel. On the one hand, we're relieved that he's rescuing our, protagonist, Michael J. Fox, but the strange, canted camera movement closing in on Penn as he's firing away gives us an unsettling feeling about the character that we can't immediately explain. Now, as far as I know, this is the only acting performance that Thuy Thu Le has ever given. Certainly it's her only film role. And it's one of the few female leads in a Vietnam War film. It's an incredibly challenging part, as her character is kidnapped and assaulted by her captors, and it's a truly heartbreaking performance. You can't help but come away from the movie haunted by her. I love that the actress does play another separate character, though, in the prologue and epilogue that bookends the film. The epilogue is set in San Francisco after the war, and you see here Lee plays a woman Erickson sees on the train who reminds him of the victimized villager from his past. There's a moment here when the camera pushes in on Lee's face, and it's kind of an emotional moment. It's hard to explain why, but I guess it's because of the trauma that we experienced while watching the film. But it's also the magic of De Palma. Adding to that magic is De Palma's frequent cinematographer, Stephen H. Burum, who knows exactly what De Palma wants and executes perfectly. There's beautiful wide shots of Southeast Asian locations, long tracking shots, split diopters, POVs, canted angles, all signature Brian De Palma, but all necessary. Nothing is for the sake of style. Legendary composer Ennio Morricone delivers one of his most tragic and beautiful scores to Casualties of War. It's one of 3 memorable scores he composed for De Palma. If there were any justice, De Palma, Burum, and Morricone would have all received Oscar nominations for their work here, but the Academy has very little credibility in my eyes. The good news is, time is what decides masterpieces, not awards. Casualties of War is part war film, part psychological thriller, all tragedy. And for all of its suspense and cinematic style, it's also heavy on dialogue. And at times, you could imagine this becoming a stage play, which I guess isn't all that surprising, considering that its screenwriter has a lot of experience as a stage playwright. David Rabe and Brian De Palma allow the actors time and opportunity to deliver rich performances and create powerful and moving scenes that keep the viewer riveted. There's a scene when Erikson is left alone in a hut with the victim. As he's standing at the entrance, watching his squad mates leave through the jungle, the camera lingers on Michael J. Fox's face, and we can see his wheels turning, trying to figure out what to do next. Then he slowly turns back into the room with the young woman. What happens next is heart-wrenching. It's also a masterclass of acting and filmmaking. Moments like this, which happen throughout the film, work because De Palma and his editor, Bill Pankow, have the patience to let the scenes breathe and the actors act. The kind of patience that we don't see very much by even today's celebrated filmmakers. Someone posted a 22-second clip from The Odyssey, in which Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, is arguing with her son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland. And there are 6 cuts in that 22-second clip. 6! Why? I'm confident you won't find any 22-second clip of Casualties of War that has 6 cuts. You probably won't find any Brian De Palma film with 6 cuts in 22 seconds. And to be honest, I often find scenes are more interesting with fewer cuts. But then again, I'm a huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, so if you know, you know. Look, this film is hard to watch due to its subject matter. It pulls no punches, and it may not be for everyone's taste. But for much of the 2-hour runtime, you're on the edge of your seat. And despite a couple of combat scenes, very well done, the film is narrowly focused on the small squadron of army soldiers and their so-called prisoner. It concentrates on the conflict within the squad and, of course, questions the nature of war. But it doesn't spell out these conflicts and questions through voiceover narration like Platoon or Full Metal Jacket. Instead, Erikson's post-traumatic stress is illustrated subtly through the filmmaking and through Michael J. Fox's excellent performance. But none of this would mean anything if it didn't have heart. And Brian De Palma put his whole heart and soul into this film. It's not just stylish, moving, and powerful. It's an important film because it has the courage to take a stand. And it took courage from everybody involved to make this film. This alone would make Casualties of War a masterpiece. But I want to conclude with the man himself.
It's a very sad movie. I can't listen to that score. And it's difficult for me to watch.
When a film is so powerful that its own director can separate himself from the story and be left that devastated, I call that a masterpiece.